How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
People often ask me how I read so much, and it's a fair question, and one of the answers is, well, I have a very good reading light, which makes a serious difference.
I think I know what you're doing. You use, if I'm not mistaken, Andy, a serious reader's lamp. The ones with daylight wavelength technology, which are supposed to replicate the daylight spectrum as closely as possible.
I do. I've been using one for about 5 years, and I absolutely love it. It's amazing how much clearer the type stands out on the page, and it means I can whip through my 50 pages a day without any risk of straining either my eyes or my brain.
So I just got one, and actually it does. It's true. It makes me want to sit and read from an actual book and not turn the TV on, which is a double win. It's also ridiculously easy to unpack, beautifully hand-built in Great Britain.
So, backlisted friends and listeners, we're going to make you an offer we hope you can't refuse.
Yeah, if you order any Serious Readers HD lamp, you'll get £100 off, plus free UK delivery. You just go to seriousreaders.com/backlisted and enter the code BACK, BACK.
If you're unhappy with it, there's a 30-day risk-free trial. You can return it after 30 days for free. But trust me, you won't want to, because they're great. So for that £100 off your Serious Reader lamp, go to seriousreaders.com/backlisted and enter the code BACK, BACK. It actually makes reading enjoyable again.
Now there's a slogan we can stand by. Let's make reading enjoyable again. Hello and welcome to Backlisted, the podcast which gives new life to old books. Today, you find us staring out to sea, bucket and spades in hand, hoping the sunshine will last long enough for us to have a nice picnic before the rain returns. I'm John Mitchinson, the publisher Unbound, where people pledge to support the books they really want to read.
I'd just like to say views expressed by individuals on this podcast do not represent those of Backlisted as a whole. I'm praying for rain because I'm Andy Miller, the author of The Year of Reading Dangerously. And if you hadn't guessed, welcome to our summer reading special. We do one of these every year where John and I are joined by...
Hello, me. That's Nicky Birch.
Nicky Birch is our producer, and she is a member of the public. Thanks for coming on, Nicky.
Well, thank you for having me.
A card-carrying member of the public.
To talk through some of the books we've been reading and which we'd like to recommend to Backlisted listeners with a view to getting you brat summer beach brain ready.
I'm excited because I'm going on holiday next week, and so this is going to get me ready. I'll just have time to order my books on bookshop.org, and then I can have them delivered.
Seamless.
The Backlisted bookshop.
Are you going to somewhere with a beach?
No, but with a pool. Going to sort of middle of France for a week to lie next to a pool and a river.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm not going on holiday next week, but I am going the week after on my my silent fasting retreat on Dartmoor.
Are you allowed to read?
No, I'm not allowed to do anything.
This might not be so useful for you, John.
Well,
you're allowed to think about things.
I'm hoping that it'll be an inner journey into something. But we shall find out anyway. 4 days only with water. And in a not even a tent, under a tarpaulin.
Sounds a bit like the norovirus you've just had.
Well, yeah. I might. The norovirus is good preparation, I think, probably for the fasting retreat. Anyway, precipitate, very, very sudden weight loss and not being able to eat anything. Hey ho, summer.
It's summer. It's summer. It's summer. It's summer. But when the summer is over, I feel certain that a lot of people listening to this will be reading a novel by Sally Rooney called Intermezzo. which is published on the 24th of September around the world. Obviously, one of the big literary events of the year. And, listeners, I've been reading it.
You lucky thing.
I was lucky enough to get a proof copy, and
Amazing.
I've been reading it. And just to fill in the backstory here for those of you who haven't listened to us before or not for a while, I think we are all three of us are fully paid up, card-carrying Sally Rooney fans.
Absolutely.
I know we talked about her second novel, Normal People, on Backlisted when it was first published. And I also know, because I can remember where I was, that we talked about her third novel, Beautiful World, Where Are You?, in Cork, John.
We did.
At the Literary Festival where we did
In
that
Galway.
great show on Galway,
Galway.
where we did that lovely show on...
with Mary Costello on the novel Elizabeth Costello.
That's right. That's how you remember it. You only have to remember 3 words that I told you I told you my brain fog's bad at the moment. You know.
J.M. Coetzee.
Anyway, I can remember reading Beautiful World, Where Are You? In the run-up to that. And I love Beautiful World, Where Are You? And I love Normal People. And I liked very much Conversations with Friends.
Yeah.
Her first novel. And as luck would have it, if you are listening to this and you're based in the USA or Canada, keep listening, because at the end of the show, there's going to be a competition to win copies of Sally Rooney's first 2 novels, Conversations with Friends and Normal People.
That's correct, yeah. I've just for our American and Canadian listeners. So it's nice because actually they don't get to come to any of our events or anything. We haven't done any American events, so it's nice to be able to have something for them,
That's
isn't it?
great.
So, yes, this by way of a literary exclusive in our summer reading episode. I don't want to give too much away about Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. Should you, the listeners, wish to get a preview of it, Nicky, where can they hear Sally Rooney herself reading from it?
Yeah, if you search for the New Yorker, The Writer's Voice podcast, and Sally Rooney reads quite a big chunk of Intermezzo, and it's called, she sort of portions a chunk of it off and calls it Opening Theory, and reads it herself very beautifully. So yeah, I recommend if you like what Andy talks about and you think, oh, I wanted to have a little taste of it, you can have a listen on the New Yorker Writer's Voice podcast.
Now, I seem to remember, John, when we talked about Beautiful World, Where Are You? 2-3 years ago, whenever that was, I expressed the view that I felt quite sorry for Sally Rooney because although one might not feel sorry for a writer as successful as she has been, I was very aware that the discourse around the publication of a new Sally Rooney novel was drowning out the actual qualities of her writing and of that novel. I feel that's a situation that's not got any better since the last one was published. And so Intermezzo represents a whole new level of the Rooney discourse. I'll say a bit more about discourse in a minute. What do you think?
I think it's particularly. I'm interested that it often seems to be a particular kind of woman novelist that gets this. For a while, I think Zadie Smith had it as well. The sort of massive expectation, and then the inevitable. Is it as good as the last one? You know. Why doesn't she write the same book again?
Yeah,
you know, a lot of that.
Yeah.
It's like they seem to. I'm probably wading into treacherous waters here, but seems to be more of an expectation for a successful woman novelist to stick within her lane. I think it's also to write within the same genre.
I think that's true, and I also think there's an expectation not just on women writers, but on people who experience phenomenal success, which perhaps neither they nor their publisher nor their record company was quite expecting, that it wrong-foots everybody. That it wrong-foots the artist, it wrong-foots the publisher, it wrong-foots the readership. Because, of course, nobody knows anything, quote William Golding.
Yeah.
So, therefore, trying to work out what it was that made it appeal to so many people can then set you off in the wrong direction. Whether do you duplicate it, do you not duplicate it? There's a writer on Twitter called Yasmin Nair, who's a backlisted listener, and she agrees. She agrees with you, John. We were talking about Sally Rooney, and she said, "I've not seen any serious critiques that don't somehow reek of, dare I say, envy and anger that a mere girl, and that is how many see her, not my perception, is so successful. But it takes work to write a novel that actually works as a novel."
Absolutely.
Now that I think Yasmin's brilliant. That is the question everyone should ask themselves who cares about such things.
It's the only question that actually matters
about Intermezzo. But unfortunately, drowning it out is the discourse. Now, what is the Sally Rooney discourse? Well, I like to think of, when I'm thinking about what a discourse is, I like to define it in the same terms as Ottawan did in their hit single from the late 70s, DISCO.
Go on. What's that,
D,
Andy?
it's dialectic. I, it's intellectual. S, it's so exciting. C, it's controversial. It's O-U-R-S-E. Or to put it a different way, discourse, it's disco you arse. That is like, right, it's fine to go to the disco, but there comes a point where you have to come back from the disco. And it's a lot of fun to go onto social media and strut your stuff and have a hot take on this phenomenon. But it always comes back to that question. It takes work to write a novel that actually works as a novel. Does Intermezzo work as a novel? Yes.
Oh, phew.
And no.
Oh.
But you'll need to read it to find out why.
Dun, dun, dun.
I don't want to, it's not plot spoilers. I don't want to actually get into the discourse too heavily. But what I will observe about it is, like a Sally Rooney novel, it's set in the contemporary times. It features two sets of relationships. So far, what we might expect.
Yeah.
When she published her first novel, Conversations with Friends, that actually turned out to be a trades description of what her method is. She gets characters to talk or text or email or tweet, and via those conversations, she explores issues to do with modern relationships and how people interrelate in the late capitalist environment, as she would see it. She's of the left. So this novel, I think, is attempting to use that method, but to do new things. It's narrated exclusively by two male characters, a pair of brothers who alternate chapters. It's written in a noticeably different style from her earlier work. So, and successfully, I would say. But what I found very interesting about it as a reader of her work and as somebody who's fascinated by how artists consolidate their success and keep going, is I suspect this might prove more challenging for people than her previous novels have. Her mass readership, it doesn't strike me as automatically a fall in love with it book. But as an artist with a long career ahead of her, it's probably the best thing she could have done.
Really? Where does it stand in the list for you?
I don't want to say.
Okay.
But what I will say is, if you loved Normal People, you may like this.
Right.
Okay. But I think so much, I'm sorry I keep going back to this, but it is really important. How you feel about what you read here is going to be so affected by whatever you already bring to the party in terms of how you feel about not just Sally Rooney, but Sally Rooney's success, and about people who criticize Sally Rooney. And all that stuff is the murk obscuring the question of the book itself, which is why I'm slightly being cagey about what I say. I was really happy to get a proof. I was really feel privileged to have discovered what I think about the novel before that really kicks off in earnest.
But you haven't, just to be clear, you're not really saying what you think about the novel here, Andy.
You're right.
And
that would be a spoiler.
Okay. Are you going to later for listeners? Will you,
Sure.
like, in 6 months' time, tell us?
Sure,
what
I'll tell you
think?
what, everybody.
Let's put a date in the diary.
If we all get to Christmas, and God
Yeah.
knows that might not happen given what's
Yeah.
happening in the world, but if we all get to Christmas, I will show my hand on the Christmas episode.
Okay.
But that's
Right.
deliberate, Nick. It's
Yeah,
not,
I get it.
Do you know what I mean?
And you and I
think
will have read it by then, Nick.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I'll be there in September.
people should be able to read
Absolutely.
a new book by an important writer without coming to it preloaded, or at least any more preloaded than they already are. I feel the same. I feel the same about music, Nicky. I think it's wonderful we live in an era where artists release new records with no fanfare and without review copies going out.
Okay, but I think it's interesting. I get it. I think what you're saying, though, is you've read it, people will have thoughts on it, and I guess that means some people may have negative thoughts on it, some people may have positive thoughts on it, and it's probably not going to be as instantly popular as normal people.
I am saying things like that, but underpinning all those things, thank you,
Is that
Nicky,
she
for
is a really good writer and therefore deserves to be treated
that is
properly.
our repeated
Yeah.
our repeated philosophy on this podcast,
Yeah.
that it's all one song.
Yeah.
If a good writer or a great musician puts out a record you don't like, they haven't done it specifically to piss you off. It's coming from the same place that the ones you did like came from.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think there's going to be quite a bit of discourse about the validity of her work as art or not as art. And I want to get it in early and say she's done the right thing.
Right.
Good.
Regardless of how enjoyable an individual reader might find it.
Okay. Well, all I can say is, having listened to the first hour or an hour on the New Yorker, I really enjoyed it. So I'm a absolutely flag waving, fan of Sally Rooney, and I loved it. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Okay, listen, you know where to go, everyone, to listen to that if you want to hear some of it now.
Great.
And we'll revisit this at Christmas.
Brilliant.
John, what have you been reading this summer?
Well, I'm doing a backlisted thing. I'm going to talk about an old book which has just been re-released. The very excellent Faber editions, re-released right at the very end of July. So very recently, a 1929 novel called Ex-Wife by Ursula Parrott, which is the end of the Jazz Age. It is a book about a marriage. Patricia and Peter, they are a New York Manhattan couple living exactly the kind of very, very drink-filled, brittle, funny, Algonquin round table, witty lifestyle that we all want in the 1920s jazz age characters to live.
And can I just say a little bit about Ursula Parrott, because I think
I'm going to read.
Are you?
I'm going to give.
She's
you,
American, isn't she?
She's an American writer. She's a magazine writer. But all you really need to know is they're kind of, very modern. Open marriage doesn't work. He has an affair. She then has an affair with his best friend, and he treats her extremely badly and decides he wants a divorce. And the book is really her attempting to deal with what she's done. Her beautiful friend Lucia, who she goes out and sort of, it is kind of, F. Scott Fitzgerald meets Sex and the City. It's astonishingly modern. I mean, I'll tell you a little bit about the history of the novel. If you like Anita Loos, or if you like
I do.
Eva Babbitt's, you will
Eve Babbitt's.
Eve Babbitt's. You will love the kind of the moxie with which she writes this book. The story is just it's the one-liners, the put-downs, the esprit d'escalier that I'm going to get him this time. They keep Peter and Patricia keep coming back together. He gets more violent. There are some very uncomfortable scenes of violence against women in the book, just as a trigger warning. She is very funny, very witty, but also incredibly vulnerable, incredibly emotionally complex. It's an extraordinarily mature book in its moral. It's like the whole of the 20th century.
Yeah.
I mean, there is nothing that a modern reader who's gone through divorce or gone through a difficult relationship, I kept having to go and think, this isn't a modern novel set in 1929, which is exactly what it reads like.
Well, Sally Rooney readers might perhaps, before they get to Sally Rooney, might want to read this Ursula Parrott novel.
The thing, we're talking about sort of tropes. Why do we like rediscovered novels? It's part of it is this kind of to sort of inhabit the consciousness of somebody who lived over 100 years ago, and here you are. But
also, it has also the thing we were just talking about. There's less discourse around an undiscovered, quote unquote, undiscovered novel. You're not coming to it with a head full of other people's opinions. You're coming to it fresh. Although this was a bestseller, wasn't it?
Yeah, let me give you a little bit from Monica Heisey's really brilliant introduction, but it gives you a really strong. It sold 100,000 copies in its first year. It's full of the Sex and the City thing. It's full of amazing descriptions of clothes. She works as a copywriter in a department store in Manhattan. It's got that kind of Mad Men attention to detail, cosmetics, clothing, so much drinking. I mean, the drinking is absolutely spectacular in the novel. Anyway, this is about Ursula Parrott because the film was famously made into the book was made into a film called The Divorcee with Norma Shearer won an Oscar for it, and Parrott was a very successful writer, but happiness did not come as easily to her. This is me reading the introduction to her as a writing. Despite amassing a substantial fortune, Parrott died on the lam and in deep debt, having been arrested multiple times. Once for impairing the loyalty and discipline of America's fighting forces, she tried to sneak a young soldier out of his barracks to take him to dinner. 3 more ill-conceived marriages were followed rapidly by 3 more divorces, and a relationship with her son, whose maternity she only acknowledged 7 years into his life, remained strained. Her abortions, alcoholism, and other assorted scandals were mocked ruthlessly by the press. The public derision got worse as she aged, fulfilling the prophecy of her earlier writing on leftover ladies, her term for the female victims of a society that pitted older women against their younger peers. She spent her final years in various hotels, taking lovers, skipping deadlines to drink and walk her dog, a poodle named, incredibly, ex-wife. And amassing,
Great name.
Amassing unpaid bills as she burned through her fortune. Beset by romantic and financial scandal, her commissions and work relationships dried up. After allegedly making off with £1,000 of a friend's silverware during a house stay, she spent her last years hiding from an arrest warrant, dying alone of cancer in a charity ward at the age of 57. So, against that background, this is a kind of, this is a sort of glittering riposte of a book of a woman in her full powers writing a novel with no handrails, no barriers. And yet what really makes you interested, what made me kind of pulled me in is it's not just titillating, although I suppose it is. It's very, very sad. She may come on like Anita Loos and Eve Babbitt's, but where she is Mae Brennan, much closer by the end of the book. You realise, although there is ostensibly a happy ending to the novel, you don't buy it for a moment. She basically, spoiler, she ends up remarrying a much more wealthy man. But there's just one beautiful little line towards the end, which I think if you want to, you know how we like a bit of melancholy on this podcast. I don't normally do this.
We like a cruel summer, not a brat one.
She's standing on the deck of a ship. They're going on a cruise with her new husband. What are you thinking, Patricia? That I mean to make you a perfect wife, Nathaniel. He smiled down at me happily. I did mean it. Yet I shall hope, through all my youth, through all my life, that in some far city I shall find my love again.
Oh, very good.
It's that thing. Peter, the husband, who she loves passionately, he's so not up to what she wants to give. And that is, I'm afraid, that is every great romance that you ever read, isn't it? The actual people don't really match up to the love that you're looking for.
Wow, this is turning into the feel-good summer show I hoped it would.
There we go. The ex-wife, Ursula Parrott, published by Faber and Faber.
And it's a paperback original.
Oh my God, look at that 80s.
There's more gold on this cover than anything I've seen in a long time.
Can I just describe the cover? It's got a kind of gold. Its ex-wife is written in a kind of Athena, if you remember them, style kind of font. And the eye of wife is a lipstick.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
I have to say, it's a brilliant novel. I, as they say, devoured it, and I've not been able to think of much else this week.
All right, so let's now turn to
Boom,
the woman on the Hackney Omnibike.
That's me.
Nicky Birch, with her first recommendation of the summer. What is it, Nicky?
Yeah, so I've also had a book that's been reissued. It's called Rhine Journey by Ann Schlee, and it's been reissued by Daunt. And it is actually a book from 1981.
It's a novel, isn't it?
It is a novel, yes. And I'm thinking about a summer read, and to me, this is the perfect summer read. It's like a book you could devour and enjoy, a bit like, I suppose, a Sally Rooney book might be, you know.
Might be,
although you won't get it. Let's say that's an autumn. That's an autumn read. But
Yeah,
this is a summer read.
Yeah.
So it was actually shortlisted for the Booker in 1981. And it's her debut book. I'd never heard of it. And it's set in Victorian times in an English family go on a journey to be, you know, in sort of somebody's not very well and so they think they're going to go to Baden-Baden and get healed, you know, that kind of thing, get better. And it's a woman called Charlotte she's a middle-aged woman called Charlotte who has been looking after somebody for many years. He's died and she's inherited some money and she's sort of come into her brother's now sort of charge. He's sort of saying, come and join our family. You can basically be our servant. We'll take your money. And he's a vicar. His wife is the one who needs to be healed in Baden-Baden. So they go on this cruise down into Prussia, down the Rhine. So that's the setting. It's a historical novel and it's written in that time. Do you know what I mean? Like it's sort of like it's set.
So it's set in the 1850s.
1850s, yeah. And it's very much with that sort of Victorian constraint.
Okay, yes. Everyone's not saying what they mean, and if they did, the whole House of Cards would come down.
That's exactly it. You've nailed it, Andy. That's basically the whole book. Yeah.
That degree did come in useful.
Yeah. And there's a really good intro by Lauren Groff who kind of explains this better than I can. But yeah, the whole book, she sort of says, is faithful to the Victorian mindset in language and emotional constraints. So she's accompanying her brother. And this is also set to the backdrop of Marx has been expelled from Cologne. And so there's sort of like a fervorish kind of political backdrop going on. And really it's about, she's single, as I said, but really it's not really a love story, but it's a what might have happened love story. So she sort of reminisces on what could have happened, how my life could have been very different if perhaps my over-dominant brother hadn't made decisions for me on my behalf.
Yeah.
You know, and there's another English family who she sees on this journey. And it's a bit like they're doing a sort of traveling thing. You know, they stop off somewhere, they see a family, and then a few days later they bump into them doing the same kind of journey further on. And she sees this man who's the husband of the family, and he looks a bit like somebody who she once potentially had a relationship with. And so she then starts remembering things and having, so in her imagination. And effectively what it does, there is a historical context, which is important, the political situation at the time, but then there's also her sort of awakening. And it's really beautiful, has beautiful language, has beautiful plot. It really kind of comes together as a great novel and is one of those ones you can just read in a day and just feel like you're so happy that you've read it.
It sounds amazing.
It's really lovely.
It's a sad summer read. I like that.
It's a sad summer read, yeah.
Marvellous.
Yeah.
Before you read a bit, are you going to read a bit?
I'll read a little bit, yeah.
I would like to note that, firstly, that this is published in the UK, republished in the UK by Daunt Books, as Nicky said, and in the States by McNally Editions, which must mean it's the work of our friend and former guest Lucy Scholes, who runs that list. And I would also like to note that we just discussed two books, haven't we? Old books, Ex-Wife and Rhine Journey, which both represent this thing we were talking about at a festival a couple of weekends ago, which is the idea of backlist books as the new frontlist books. How, to use a particular phrase, new life is being given to old books by publishers and podcasts and bloggers and the internet. And we're going to be reprising that talk at the Cheltenham Literary Festival in October. Dates to be announced. So hopefully we'll see some of you there for that.
I've not read any Ann Schlee, but I think she's one of those writers. I know that I remember reading Jane Gardam wrote a really nice piece about her. She died, I think, last year.
Did she?
2023. And Jane Gardam was a huge fan. And it feels like Jane Gardam. She wrote books that were, I think one of her books won the Carnegie or was shortlisted for the Carnegie, and as well as the Booker. So she was one of those writers that was able to, there aren't many who do it well, who can cross between adult and children's.
That's right. This was her first adult book.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I'm not, you said it, we sort of talked about being sad. I don't think it is a sad book, really. It's more thoughtful.
Wistful.
Thoughtful, wistful,
Okay.
yes. But ultimately redemptive. So that's quite nice,
All right.
without giving the game away too much.
It sounds like a very good, it sounds perfect, as you say. It definitely feels McNally, Daunt, and a perfect summer reading.
Yeah, a really lovely summer read. Right, so I'm just going to read a small bit of it. So Charlotte, who's main character, she has come across this family, as I said, on the journey. Mr. Newman is the man who she sort of thinks might look like, she's not saying he is the person that she had a frisson with. He just reminds her of him, and therefore it makes her incredibly nervous. And as you can imagine, all kind of can't really speak to this person. And she's traveling, as I said, with her brother and her brother's family. So Mr. Newman turns and directed a question towards Charlotte. He held no terrors for her now. She could even see that he was not entirely a gentlemanly person. How does one know, other than by a sensibility to the minutest detail of dress and speech imbued by years of caution in such matters? Yet she liked the frankness with which he addressed her, as if the little effort to draw her into the conversation should be taken as a matter of course. He asked her if she looked forward to visiting the cathedral at Cologne. "We do not intend to visit the cathedral," answered Mr. Morrison, that's her brother. "What is of real interest, the progress of the building, will be visible from without. As for what goes on inside, I should scarcely care for my wife and child to be exposed to such an atmosphere of superstition and venial preying upon the ignorant and credulous. When one thinks that these are the very people who are agitating for freedom of conscience, what freedom do they ask but to subject themselves still further to a degrading spiritual bondage?" Mr. Newman had watched the clergyman throughout this impassioned speech. He made no attempt to answer, but returned his look, a little ironically, to Charlotte, to whom he had originally addressed his question. That's the kind of vibe.
Ah, it's marvellous.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Great. What's that called, Nicky? We had 3 summaries. What was that called?
Rhine Journey by Ann Schlee.
And that's published by Daunt Books in the UK and McNally Editions in the US. Join us after the break for 3 more summer reads.
The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
New Vitamin Water Zero Sugar Pineapple Passion Fruit is packed with vitamins. Just like the amount of peas we packed in that sentence. It's packed like your tote bag. The one you stole from your ex. Or your overpriced half a studio apartment. Or extra rushed rush hour traffic. Packed like your calendar. Triple booked at 5, of course. Grab a Vitamin Water. Did we mention it's packed with vitamins?
Finding a new job is stressful. But with Indeed, it doesn't have to be. Just fill out your Indeed profile with your skills, experience, and desired salary. The more you fill out, the better your matches will be. And hearing from hiring managers will be 2 times more likely. Relax. That's your Indeed profile sending opportunities your way. Indeed, the world can work better.
Well, welcome back, everybody. This is the second half of our summer reading special here on Backlisted.
If you're in Scotland, it's pretty much autumn reading now, but hey, that's okay. We're here
That's
for
all
you.
right. Reading is not a seasonal activity, believe it or not.
What have you got in that hamper, Andy, that you want to share with us?
I've got a delicious book about hypochondria. Who wouldn't want to know about that in the summer? Our guest on a recent episode of Backlisted about Endless Night by Agatha Christie, which I know lots of you have listened to, and thank you so much for all your positive feedback about that one. Our guest, Caroline Crampton, is the host of the She Done It crime fiction podcast, but she's also a terrific author in her own right. And this book, A Body Made of Glass, A History of Hypochondria, was published earlier this year. It's out now. And I just wanted to note, before I say a little bit about it, that often John and I don't have time to read our guests' books before they appear on the show, which seems tremendously rude. But what usually happens is we have so much to do for the actual show that we then don't get time to read their books when we're not going to be able to talk much about their books. But I was thinking this year that some of my favourite reads have been novels, or in this case, non-fiction, that I've picked up after the guest has been on the show and read, like A Flat Place by Noreen Massoud, who's a fantastic book. Rose Rouane's Birding, which is a novel that I wish I could talk more about that today. If you haven't encountered Rose's novel about two women in a seaside town, her second novel called Birding, you may remember Rose from our episode about Abra by Joan Barfoot. Well, Rose's novel is absolutely terrific. It also has my favourite cover of the year, but I've already talked about that on Shortlisted. So sorry, Rose. Sorry, everybody. I can't do it again. But Caroline's book, A Body Made of Glass, and the subtitle is A History of Hypochondria. And what Caroline has done here is take us through the history of people feeling unwell when they may or may not actually be unwell, beginning in the age of Hippocrates and taking us right through to the wellness industry today. And so Caroline is the research in this is superb. You go through doctors who thought that it was nonsense to doctors who thought it was a worse illness than nostalgia. Nostalgia, as we know, originally diagnosed as an illness. I didn't know that. Did you not know that? No. Illness, yeah. If you were a soldier in the Russian army and you were diagnosed with nostalgia, you were sent home because it's weakness. It was mental weakness.
Just that life was better before this. Is that the kind of thing?
Yes, right. And it would make you, to use this word again, wistful rather than fighty. Yeah. So. And similarly, women in the Victorian era, hypochondria is conflated with this catch-all term, neurasthenia. It's seen as being a uniquely feminine condition.
That doesn't ring true to my experiences.
No, well, do you know what I mean, Nicky? It's like this. The gendered nature of hypochondria is also explored by Caroline here, and she talks us through scientists and artists and writers who have suffered with conditions, some of which are real and some of which are imaginary, including Molière, Charles Darwin, Virginia Woolf, Sigmund Freud, Philip Larkin, of course, and Marcel Proust, the patron saint of the hypochondriac. So hypochondriacal was he that he made himself ill. So it's a really interesting idea anyway, but it's also, she's built into it her own experience of being diagnosed. I'll just read this tiny bit. She writes in the introduction, I am a hypochondriac, or at least I worry that I am, which really amounts to the same thing. The fear is that there is something wrong with me, that I am sick is always with me. I doubt that what I experience are physical sensations, and I distrust my own interpretations of what I feel. Sometimes the anxiety is distant and muffled, like a radio playing in another room of the house, barely there. At other times, it is all I can hear. It wasn't always this way. For the first 16 years of my life, I was gloriously unaware of my own state of health. I experienced the usual cocktail of childhood maladies, from chickenpox to tonsillitis, but being ill was merely a temporary state that passed after a few days of rest and the ingestion of the right medicine. Once I was on my feet again, I never gave my sick bed a backwards glance. The watershed in my understanding of myself, the before and after moment, came when I was 17 and on the precipice of adulthood, cautiously looking over the edge at what my independent life might be like. I was applying to university, making new friends, getting serious about writing. Then, a busy winter of feeling run down culminated in me being diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, a relatively rare type of blood cancer. After months of treatment, I was given the all clear and went off to university as planned. Once I made it after 5 years after the end of the treatment, the likelihood of my getting cancer again had become about the same as for the rest of the population. There were no more annual checkups, no more preventative medications, no more scans. My body and my life, they said, were cancer-free. But I am not free. I want to draw the listener's attention to something that I really loved in this book. First of all, it's tremendously well written. And by that, I don't mean that the prose is spectacular or that it reinvents the wheel. It doesn't. But what it does is it deals with a topic in depth, appropriately, sensitively, and occasionally surprisingly. It is a total pleasure to read this book. And I will note for the listener that that's embedded even in the title and subtitle. So it's called A Body Made of Glass, A History of Hypochondria, which at first sight appears to be a fairly standard formula of imagistic title followed by explicatory subtitle. But the subtitle has two meanings and two resonances. Superficially, A History of Hypochondria is what it is. It's a history of hypochondria and what we mean by hypochondria. But there's also a second meaning. A history of hypochondria suggests to me someone with a history of hypochondria. It's like a diagnosis or the note in the margin of a medical record. And that's how Caroline's own experience informs the book. It doesn't overwhelm it, but she's letting you know that this matters to her. She's not giving you a long magazine article with some interesting facts gleaned off the internet. She's exploring so that she can better understand it, her own hypochondria, but not in a me style. I think it's a really terrific and underrated book. This book should be much, much more widely reviewed and widely read. It's really, really good.
Can I ask you a question about it?
Yes, please do. Yeah.
So who's going to like it? Like, who would it appeal to? Do you need to be knowing someone who's hypochondriac or a hypochondriac yourself
Nicky,
to enjoy this?
Nicky, you've been enjoying the Olympics, haven't you?
I have been loving it.
Right. Yeah. So I'm going to put it in these terms for you. You know the horse dancing at the Olympics?
Not one of my favourite sports, but I'm aware of it, yes.
But you know, right? You wouldn't watch it the rest of the time, but you watch it at the Olympics, right? So the author in this scenario is the rider, and the rider is putting the horse through its paces, and the horse is the book, right? And the pleasure, if it's done perfectly, is it's just beautiful to watch. And it can both be judged by experts who know what to look for, but also members of the general public who don't often look at horse dancing, but can see it being done well. So, Nicky, in this metaphor, I am the expert here, right? And you are Snoop Dogg, which I thought you would like, right? You're the guy going, whoa, what's this happening? I mean, look at the horse dance. Who will read it? People who have an appreciation for good books, well written.
Right.
Okay. Plus, I think there is also a secondary audience of people who are interested in the history of patriarchal ways of controlling women's behavior, or just feminism, or just a social history of women throughout this period. So much of hypochondria is linked
absolutely
incorrectly with female identity culturally.
And male control, attempts to control,
Sounds like the previous book I've just been reading, Rhine Journey.
There's only one. We know there's just one book. There's only one book.
Great, Andy.
It's all one book.
Unfortunately, I'm about to reprise many of the same themes.
So that is A Body Made of Glass, A History of Hypochondria by Caroline Crampton, published by Granta. And I'll give you one. Nicky, I'll give you one other group of people who should read this book. Aspiring non-fiction writers should read this book. This is how you do it.
Okay, that's good.
This is how you do it.
That's very good.
And I don't often feel that when I read something, but within pages, yeah, you know what it's like, John. Mostly I read things and go, well, then why did they do that? But this one, within pages, I thought, I'm going to enjoy this. There's going to be nothing in here that's going to make me feel ill. I mean, it's terrific. It's terrific. Anyway.
Yeah, she's such a good writer. Those little essays that she writes on She Done It are, I think, a brilliant little...
Yes, they are.
She writes about fiction as well as she writes about this. You've really totally sold me on this. I mean, I'm interested. I'm interested in... It reminds me a little bit of that great Susan Sontag book, which I haven't read for years, Illness as Metaphor.
Oh, yeah.
And also there are themes in it that I think I talked about Freedom by Olivia Lang on one of the podcasts. That question about who reads it, I think there is. I hate the description of it as smart thinking, but those sections on bookshops, I think it kind of is. It's sort of non-fiction that is philosophical, but it also has narratives and stories within it. It's not sort of dry or academic.
Nicky, you ask, as ever, of a highly
always the best
seemingly
question.
Straightforward, but in fact, an incredibly complex question. What is going to sell this book? Well, the subject seems perhaps of limited appeal. And this is always where these are tougher books to sell when what distinguishes it is the quality with which the topic is handled. You need... As the cliche goes, you need a lot of good broadsheet reviews and a couple of prizes. And then people read it and think, of course, I've always wanted to know about hypochondria, they tell themselves. You know, I'm interested in the subject, but I thoroughly, I feel terribly enthusiastic about seeing somebody do one of these things properly.
Well,
so there you go. Full marks from this judge.
Plus, a lot of people out there, Nicky, I know it's hard for you to understand this, but a lot of people out there complain about how unwell they are most of the time.
Yeah, they don't have your superwoman-like qualities of
we all,
recovery.
I think we all know one or two of those people, don't we? Let's be honest.
We do. Mitch, what have you been also reading this summer?
I'm going to, although as will be revealed, there are points at which, as you say, it's all one book. I'm going to talk about a novel that was shortlisted for last year's Booker Prize, which is A Spell of Good Things by bámi Adébáyọ. And she is a Nigerian novelist. Her first novel, books published by Canongate, as was her previous novel, Stay With Me, which again was shortlisted for a whole range of other prizes.
Yeah.
The novel, that book was set in the early 80s and during the dictatorship. This is later in they're not connected in any way other than they're both set in more or less nearly contemporary Nigeria. And it is the story of two families, one middle class and relatively well off. The main character, Wariola, is a doctor who is engaged to be married, and a lot of the book is basically the incredible preparation for that massive and important ceremony. A massive and important ceremony that is there is a pall cast over it by the violence which the groom practices on the wife to be, which really is a brilliantly handled, and the book is again about how institutions and men in particular, or the patriarchal systems of which Nigeria is full, control the lives of women. But also there is another family. So there's the middle class family, and then there's the poor family, which is a school teacher who has had his job taken away from him by the government. And the book is a slow or not so slow descent into poverty. The mother having to basically beg for food to keep the two children alive. The main character, Eniola, is a schoolboy, a young teenager, and his sister is more academically gifted than him. So money that the family have, such as it is paid to keep her in a good school, and he goes to a really terrible school where he's badly bullied and eventually falls in with a bad lot, and is he works the way the two plots are combined is he works in a hair salon as a sweeping the floor, and the great matriarch of the mother of Wariola, who is organising the wedding, he overhears many of her conversations. Political corruption, male violence, the horrible, debilitating effects of poverty, and yet full of incredible life and incredible description and detail. I mean, there are people who, in that slightly lazy way, say, "Oh, she has a Dickensian sort of flair for minor characters and great set pieces." She definitely has all of that.
It's a bit of a saga, isn't it? I have actually read this, John. This was one that was the one I talked about.
Was this the one you read?
Yeah.
Okay. A spell of good things. Well, there you go.
I tell you what, I love. It's great to have descriptions about Nigerian culture, so well read and so well kind of the scene is set, but it's also like a proper like summer saga, isn't it? Where you're waiting to see how it all unravels, and it's a proper good book.
The ending is devastating. Just to let everybody know, it doesn't end happily. But what I would also say is that what it really reminded me of, and I interviewed bámi at Hay, and she was hoping she'll come and do a podcast. She was fantastic, really, really interesting. It was actually Zola. That's what she's really doing, and I think the next novel is going to be, she's building up in the same way that Zola does a really detailed, rich portrait of contemporary Nigeria, with characters that you care about, but which she refuses to, for the purposes of, flattering an audience who want to have happy endings, to give them happy endings. This is tough, very tough. She's a very literary writer. That's the thing. She's read everybody, but she's a great storyteller. I'll give you one paragraph just to give you the flavour. But I have to say, this is not a book that is where you're going to pick flair passages out. But here's a little bit towards the end of the book. Eniola, all you need to know is that Honourable is the corrupt politician that Eniola, out of his desperation because his family are so poor, has started to do jobs for, and you can already feel by this stage, this is the sort of last quarter of the book, that things are going to go wrong. Eniola's worry about what his mother would say concerning the foodstuff he'd gotten from Honourable's house had been for nothing. He arrived home long before she did and spent the evening thinking about explanations that could help him evade a truth he suspected would upset his parents. He was not bothered about giving his father any explanations. He only worried about what his mother might think. After all, if the man had done what he should in the last few years, the family would not need the things Honourable had given. His mother, though, she always tried, even if her efforts did not amount to enough money to pay his fees and Buzola's, that's his sister. She had tried. When his mother returned home, it was late in the night. She nodded weakly and smiled when he showed her the foodstuff. As she counted out 7 cups of rice, 10 cups of gari and 5 of beans, he waited for her to insist that she would not eat any of the items until he explained their origin. She did not. Instead, she hugged him until his arms felt numb.
So it's so great, and it's really about pressure, isn't it? It's about pressure on all sides. So pressure from Kunli's family about the sort of marriage, and that she doesn't really, she knows that it's not the kind of the great relationship that it should be, and she doesn't really want to, but she's under so much pressure to sort of be perceived as being a good girl,
and her sister, right, she's got this amazing sister who calls it all out. And calls
that's
it,
right. And her sister is this sort of, she's right. She's a very modern character, isn't she?
Yeah.
The sister's like, screw society. You should be, you should leave him. And then Eniola's pressure from his parents to do the right thing, but he hasn't got any money. And how do we? And the parents' pressure to be kind of, to do well by their children, but society is, as you said, taken away the the tools that allow them to do it. It's really great.
It's a forensic, account of what deep inequality does to human values.
I just like that a writer in the 21st century is embarking on a Rougon Macquart cycle of 20 novels to analyse the Nigerian society from the top to the bottom. That's incredible. She's got, I like you, Nicky. I love reading African fiction, but she's got such a authority about her. It's that great thing is, why would I want to read about a sad novel, ultimately sad novel set in Nigeria? Well, you want to read it because every character is not a stock character. It's very cleverly done. Again, it's not the subject, is it? It's the treatment of the subject. It's the way it's done. Really, really, really top quality fiction. What's it called? It is called A Spell of Good Things. It was published last year by Canongate, shortlisted for the Booker Prize. And who's the author? And it is bámi Adébáyọ. All right. Now, we've focused exclusively in this summer reading special so far on books by women. But men write books too, and so, Nicky, please bring us our token male contributor for this episode.
Yes.
Who is it?
So we talked about this on Locklisted, our subscriber show, but we're going to bring it here to everybody because we think this is probably a big summer hit, isn't it?
It's the book of the summer.
It's the book of the summer, the David Nicholls You Are Here, another book that about middle-aged romance. If you could say that the Rhine Journey is about middle-aged romance of sorts. And it is a David Nicholls, what is it? How many books has he done?
Half a dozen, maybe 6 or 7. And this is his most successful. This has proved to be his most successful novel since One Day. And as we know, One Day has sort of now become a modern classic insofar as it was a bestseller and then again a bestseller.
Yeah, because of the success of the One Day TV show as well, he's become more famous because he was involved in writing that. So, it's about two individuals who are among a group of people who set out for a coast-to-coast walk, and in doing so, they, eventually get together. Or do they? Or do they? Sorry. Spoiler alert. It's also about their own backstories and their lives, and it's one of those books where, and I said this on Locklisted, but you sit down to read it at the beginning of the day, and oops, there's the day gone, and that is nothing better than that for a holiday read. Is there? It's a pure pleasure, and I just think enjoy it, embrace it. There's lots to be said about kind of we can pick out books from the backlist and we can kind of enjoy difficult and challenging books. This isn't a difficult or challenging book. It's a really enjoyable book.
Okay, so listen, I wasn't being entirely whimsical when I pointed out this was the only book by a man that we talked about today, because when we talked about this book on Locklisted, I talked a little about the experience. I interviewed David when the book was published, and when we came out on the stage to a packed house, it was very evident that the house was packed with female readers and a few fellow travelling men. And indeed, Nicky, could you read out who the names are on the front cover of You Are Here?
Gorgeously witty and joyful, says Catherine Rundell. Magnificent, says Marion Keyes. Nicholls' best book ever, says Caitlin Moran. Such a lovely book, says Nigella Lawson.
74% of fiction is bought by women in the UK. So,
well, what I want to say is, I know men, you find it hard to read fiction, but you'd really like this, men. Men, you would really like this. You wouldn't like it because women like it. You would like it because it's extremely well observed, amusing. It has a fantastic story, but it also has lots of stuff about the right rucksack to use. So men, you like that.
There's a lot of great walking kit in there.
So I feel almost. I feel I'm very glad that David, who is a great writer and a very good person, has a big enthusiastic readership. But I feel it's one of those examples of the publisher is doing the right thing there. It's saying to that big enthusiastic readership, women like you really like this writer and will love this book. And you have to choose, don't you, John? You have to choose who you're going to market a book to. Yeah. But it's also a thing where I think men probably might miss out on reading a book they would really, really enjoy. And I hate, on one level, making those distinctions, but I'm also very aware that commercially, things tend to be divided down that line.
And for the reasons that I've just said, because women buy fiction, but actually it's not true that only, as I hope this podcast shows, it's not true that only women read fiction. And it's there's something about David Nicholls' work which I think is there are very few writers I say you could almost give to anyone. But if David Nicholls is if somebody say, I find it quite difficult to read fiction. I've had this conversation so many times with friends. Where would you start? This would be a really, really good book. Say this, just try this, because if you're, as I think I said to you, I had that very strange experience of listening to his Desert Island Discs and wondering if, in fact, I was David Nicholls. Because it was so, where's he going to go next? He goes from Say a Little Prayer to Cloud Busting by Kate Bush to Life on Mars.
And he talks about how he was always rubbish at all sports ever.
To the Goldberg Variations.
That guy's ripping me off. What's he doing?
Who knows where the time goes by Fairport, and ends up with Tracy Thorn's, Massive Attack. It's just...
He is, the Desert Island Discs, it's not just the music, but it's really brilliant.
It's so good.
The way he talks about, for example, how he plotted out one day.
Exactly.
It's amazing. As a book lover, you should definitely listen to his Desert Island Discs.
Also, I want to make the best recommendation I can, which is Nicky's description of what captivated her when she read the book, which is the day's gone, or you couldn't put it down, or you wanted to know what happened next. All those cliches. Listeners, even I felt that. Yeah. And I, as you know, am hostile to those feelings when I'm being manipulated when I read a book. But it really does take you along with it. Yeah. The plot works, and the plot works in perfect proportion to the other attributes that David brings to his writing. So yeah, it's a triple thumbs up from this panel.
Absolutely. And I have exactly the same. It's, the part of me that wants to kind of get people to read more complicated experimental fiction and work in translation and modernist poetry. There is a great joy in reading a beautifully constructed, intelligent, humane, complex work of fiction, and that's what David Nicholls writes. These are not pot boilers written to kind of, as you said, Andy, to sort of convert female readers as though that's somehow a kind of a lesser form of fiction. This is a great novel, and everybody who admires and enjoys great storytelling will get something out of this book.
But there's a link, isn't there? So there's a link at the beginning and the end of these books, right? The Sally Rooneys and the David Nicholls, right, are people we should be cherishing and promoting, and not be knocking them. It's easy to knock people, but let's just knock Colleen Hoover and let's stay with David and give Sally the kudos that they deserve.
Yeah, reading for pleasure, listeners, is not a myth, it turns out.
Yeah,
it's so still true. Possible. It can still be done. It can be done. Right. Speaking of reading for pleasure, Nicky, do you want to tell people in the States and in Canada how they can enter this draw?
Yes, so we've got copies of the Sally Rooney, Conversations with Friends and Normal People to give away. And all you need to do is to either contact us via Twitter or Instagram. And on Twitter, it's @backlistedpod. And on Instagram, it's @backlisted_.
And you're not doing that privately. You're not doing that on DM. You're doing that publicly. And to enter the draw, you have to type the exact phrase as follows. And any mistakes will eliminate you from the prize draw. And it is as follows. Yes! ! I will read Sally Rooney, full stop.
And that's it.
That's it.
Yes! ! I will read Sally Rooney.
Yes! ! I will read Sally Rooney, open brackets, with an open mind, close brackets, full stop. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. So the phrase you need to type is yes, exclamation mark, I will read Sally Rooney, full stop.
Yeah.
That's
and that
it.
is backlisted.
All you have
pod.
to do is tweet that at us or backlisted_ on Instagram. We will keep a record of those. And then when that's died down, we will let the people know who've won, and they'll be getting copies of Conversations with Friends and Normal People. Sorry, UK listeners, but you've
probably already read it
get
anyway,
access to
haven't you?
other things,
Yeah.
and they've probably already read it, so that's fine.
So, much like the British summer, this has been far too short. Thank you for joining us and for not lighting your disposable barbecues too close.
What weird version of summer is this? I want nothing to do with this. Nothing.
Oh, sorry, too irresistible.
If you want show notes with clips, links, and suggestions for further reading for this show and the 217 that we've already recorded, please visit our website at backlisted.fm. If you want to buy the books discussed on this or any of our other shows, visit our shop at bookshop.org and choose Backlisted as your bookshop. And we're still keen to hear from you on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, via postcard, and wherever else you feel compelled to write from.
If you want to hear Backlisted early and ad-free, subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/backlisted. Your subscription brings other benefits. If you subscribe at the lot listener level, for the cost of a fat, sand-encrusted paperback, you'll get not one, but 2 extra exclusive podcasts every month. The Lot Listed podcast features the three of us talking and recommending the books, films and music we've enjoyed in the previous fortnight. For those of you who liked our What Have You Been Reading slot, that's where you'll now find it.
Or indeed this episode.
Yeah, if you like this.
More of these vibes.
Yeah, more of these vibes, a bit more chat thrown in. Plus, also, Lot listeners get their names read out, like this.
P. Stevens, thank you. This just looks like payola. We didn't plan this, everybody, but I'm going to read this out. Caroline Crampton. It may not be the same Caroline Crampton who's been a guest and whose book I've just recommended, but thank you, Caroline Crampton. If it is the same one, it is
You're
the same
very
one.
kind.
Thank you, Caroline Crampton. Trevor Tucker, thank you. Chris Burnage, thank you. Susan Riaz, thank you.
Loveday Newman, thank you. Great name. Makita Brotman, thank you. Michelle O'Riordan, thank you. Julie Slotnick, thank you. And Robert Macrina, thank you.
Nicky, do you want to say, you take us out this time? Go on, say thank you.
Well, thanks, guys. Have a lovely summer, and we're looking forward to more exciting books. And we've got lots of great shows planned for the autumn. So it's going to be brilliant.
We got live shows. We got festival appearances.
We could actually announce one of our live shows. We're doing another run at Foyles in the autumn.
In London, in Charing Cross Road, London.
Yeah, so on Wednesday, the 25th of September, we will be doing an Octavia Butler book.
We will be doing The Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, which we are very excited about recording a live episode with. And there's 2 very specific reasons, aside from the quality of that particular novel. John, who will be joining us at that show?
We have got a friend of the show and sci-fi expert supreme, Una McCormack, joined by, and this is very exciting for us because we have been very keen to get her back to do a show, and she's a massive fan of this novel, and it will the combination of Selena Godden, the poet and novelist, with Una McCormack on The Parable of the Sower.
Tickets available now. You can go onto the Foyles website and you can buy them.
I would pay to go, even though I'm actually on stage. I mean, I'm.
If you remember Selena's last appearance on Backlisted, which was quite near the beginning of the run, 8 or 9 years ago, where she did Hubert Selby Jr.'s Last Exit to Brooklyn, the passage she read from that has something in common with the time that Una McCormack appeared on the podcast in front of an audience at the Port Eliot Festival alongside Max Porter and read a section of Ridley Walker by Russell Hoban, in as much as both those readings were so amazing that I remember looking at Matt, our original producer in the first instance, and Nicky at the desk on the other side of the tent in the second episode, and mouthing, "Are you recording this?" Because in both instances, those readings were so incredible. and in the latter one because of the live audience. So I'm saying, do not sleep on this, listeners. This is going to be an absolutely fantastic live show.
Amazing.
So we hope to see some of you
brilliant
there.
Guests, brilliant place,
brilliant audience.
Great.
So,
all right. Well, look, it's been great, guys. Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah.
Enjoy your going outdoors. I will not be doing any such thing. I'm going back to bed now. Okay. So see everybody.
Bye.
Have fun.
Everybody. Bye.
Bye. Bye.